So we've had such an amazing time looking around your exhibition. Thank you so much. I know you've opened specially for us and things as well.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's been mind-blowing. So we did introduce you at the start of the episode, but this is Nick. You can see his face now. We've seen all of his creations. This is the man behind the mask, I suppose I can say.
Yes, you could say that.
It's just been so wonderful to see the creative artistic juice that you've got going into all these different things.
I have a passion for creating generally. And I think that when you're creative, it doesn't really make a difference what you're making. You just have this drive to make something. You know, I learned stage makeup as a would-be performer as a kid, and that led me to being a makeup artist when I realized at 18 that everyone had lied to me and I wasn't going to be tall and handsome, and I was going to be unemployed most of the time as a performer.
You and me both.
Yeah, so consequently, I just decided to make the most of the makeup side. So I went from teaching at Middlesex University to making movies. Even then, it was like another 7 years before I got to make Star Wars, and then suddenly everything changed. I say never ever put yourself in a box. I don't call myself a makeup artist because that would stop me from being a storyboarder for animatronics. I say to people, you have an engineering degree, say you've got an engineering degree. Don't say you're an engineer because it'll stop you writing poetry. There's no reason in the world why you can't be more than one thing. And my life's been a whole series of creative changes to go from making pretty people looking prettier to making pretty people looking pretty ugly, and then to go from that into puppets, from puppets into animatronics, from animatronics into directing animatronics, and doing storyboards. At the same time, I thought if I was a better artist, I'd be a better makeup artist. So in what spare time I had, I was practicing painting and drawing. I've written 2 books. I'm working on my first novel right now. I'm writing music with a band in Idaho. Let your creativity run. It's the same creative drive. You have an inspiration, you have an idea, you look at the materials, you make something.
And it's so interesting because you can see, or at least I think I can see progression in the different things you've done, where you know the makeup artistry has fed into the puppet design.
You build on what you have. Every time I saw something being done that I hadn't done before, I would go home and spend what money I earned on that job teaching myself how to do it. You know, and because I was teaching myself, I did it differently to everybody else, and then my stuff was different to everybody else's, and that helps to make you the red tree in the forest. Always build on what you've got and expand.
And you can see that in what we've seen in the exhibition, but also here in the store side of things. It's been incredible seeing the diversity of things that you create.
As I say in my little book of big ideas, which is the do or do not outlook. First, you have to believe in yourself because you can't achieve what you don't believe. And number 2, you have to just keep on pushing on when you screw everything up, you know, because you're going to make a world of mistakes, and you don't call a mistake a failure. You call it a setback because you haven't failed until you've given up.
And on that point, you also work in not just in an exhibition and all the movie work you've done, you've progressed that even further now here in Sint Maarten with the foundation. Which
it's called the Follow Your Star Foundation. For a long, long time, my catchphrase that I would write when I did autographs was "Follow your star." I know it could have been "May the Force be with you," but everybody else was writing that, right? Yeah. You know, when I was 13, my teacher explained to me that I was an idiot from low-income housing, what in England we call a council house, and that all my ideas were completely impractical, and therefore I should take up woodwork so I could maybe, if I was lucky, I'd be a foreman in the factory. And if I believed that, that's what I would have done.
Incredible.
Right? So, you know, I got galvanized as a pushy 13-year-old kid to prove the teacher was wrong. And every time I thought I'd have to give up, I thought about that teacher, and I thought about telling him, going back to see him and saying, you know, you were right, I wasted another 5 years. Gee. Right? And that would keep me going another week. And there were times when things were really brutally difficult.
Absolutely.
But, you know, as I say, the people who fail are the ones who give up. And so Follow your star was my way of saying to people, follow your dream, follow the star you set for yourself, not some other star that someone else thinks you ought to do. Don't take on a career just because someone else thinks it's a good thing for you to do, because if you don't love what you do, you'll always be second rate at it. If you have a passion for what you're doing, you always put in more effort than the next guy, and that's why you succeed.
And that's the thing. So with the Follow the Star Foundation and some of the things you've told us about as well off camera with regards to going into hospitals for sick children with your protege.
Sure, yes, right.
And working with new and upcoming artists who
I have a fully functional puppet Yoda that I put together to try and uplift kids that are having a hard time. Or even just kids at schools. I did a thing in Tulsa where we went to 300 kids in a school, and I talked to them about following their dreams and believing in themselves and not settling for less just because that's what everybody else does. Because it's normal to take your standards from the people around you. I talk about this in my book. I talk about the ocean of humanity. Think of yourself like you are just a drop of water, but all collectively, we humanity create an ocean. Well, in an ocean, there are waves and currents, and they're going in a particular direction. And if you just sit in the water, you go with those waves. And the first wave is you get born, and the second wave is you learn to talk, and then you make some friends, and then you go to school, and everyone is doing the same thing, these same waves. So it's what's normal. And so you just take it for granted. That's what everybody does. And you judge whether you're doing well or badly by those people around you. That's normal. But no one ever points out that another word for normal is average or standard or ordinary. And ordinary people get killed in video games. You know?
The man in the red shirt in Star Trek.
Exactly, right. Yes, So, if you want to live an extraordinary life, you can't achieve that by being the same as everybody else. Every hero and every heroine that you have, look at their lives and you'll see they're not normal.
Absolutely, and it's fun because it resonates for us a little bit. We sold everything we had to buy a boat and leave the country we knew in the middle of a crisis, and now we're definitely not living a normal life. But to hear somebody who's been living an incredible life, it's so inspiring for us to hear that.
Yeah, but when you go through things, you have different episodes in your life. There was a time when we had a private zoo in England, and then there was a time when we were sailing around the Caribbean. Oh, and I lived as an artist. Oh, and I'm encouraging kids to follow their dreams. Oh, and I've got a museum, but it's not like a normal museum because I'm a creative guy and I want to do it differently. There have been other things that I've done that maybe haven't completely taken off. I invented a new form of entertainment, which I call a holodrama, where you could have cinematic effects happening live on stage. We needed 70 million to pull that one off, so that's it's easy, probably never going to happen, right?
Well, if you're watching,
you learn something along the way, and having played with those holographic effects, we ended up putting them in the museum instead, right? So nothing is ever wasted.
That's it. Even if it doesn't look like a success at the time, it actually reforms into something.
It forms into something else, exactly.
Absolutely incredible. Yoda is held around the world as being the wisdom-wise being that knew so many things, had learned so much.
Yes, he is. My boss, Stuart, was the mastermind behind the building of Yoda. He was the one who sculpted Yoda. It was his ideas of animatronics that we were seeing through on the first Star Wars movie. And if I hadn't worked with him, I wouldn't have learnt enough to be able to adapt what he was doing into the Yoda that I built that raised the X-Wing out of the forest.
There we go.
Yoda had been, I thought I was making the molds and the skins and the skulls, but ultimately Yoda had some mechanical problems and they wanted a walking Yoda, so I built that for them. Then they wanted a radio-controlled Yoda, and I worked with two of the radio control guys to build that. And then they asked me if I could build a backup for the main puppet, which we called the backup Yoda, but was actually in 80–90% of the movie.
Oh my goodness.
So there were two versions.
I love how you face all those typical challenges of a tech team saying, okay, so now can we have it living, breathing, if it can swim and fly.
Right. Yeah.
Just find another way to create.
Just find another way to do it. And, you know, we had to do that with the radio control version because they discovered they couldn't put 4 puppeteers in a backpack.
I mean, you can try, but
yeah, they did. But the arms and legs kept sticking out.
Brilliant. So I do have one final silly question, which I have to ask you. It's actually on behalf of my dad.
Okay.
And he was wondering, when you were working on Yoda originally, and you were developing this character as the life that's in Yoda, was the goal to have him fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee that he became in some of the movies, or was it to be the wise character?
No, it was to be the wise character. He was based, and this is down to George Lucas. He's a classic character in folklore. He's the beggar by the side of the roadside that you meet on your way to meet the king, who turns out to be the king.
There it is.
It's a classic fairy story character.
See, it's so poetic in itself, and it's so nice to hear that, you know, again, from someone who has such an intimate knowledge of not only this character, but so much of the Star Wars universe.
Sure.
It's so great to hear that from you. So thank you so much. We've taken up tons of your time. You've let us look around and take all this footage. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. May the Force be with you and expand your horizons always.
There we go. Follow your star. And we will put links to your book, to the museum, to everything we'll get from you, and make sure everyone sees it. So when you are in Sint Maarten, you know where to come. Seriously, you will be missing out if you don't come here.
This is the only place in the world where you can interact with a Star Wars personality without paying to get into a convention.
Right.
Of course, you got to pay to get here.
Yeah, well, yeah, that helps. Yeah.